Hey guys, Joey Pals here. If you guys watched the Persona 1 retrospective I put out recently, which you absolutely should, link below, you'll know that I didn't spend a lot of time talking about one of the more controversial points of Persona 1's PSP port, the soundtrack. I simply wanted to dedicate a whole separate video to this game's OST, and share my thoughts without bogging down the retrospective with all my opinions, so here we are. So first, we have to discuss how the PSP version of Persona 1's soundtrack differs from the original game. The PSP port of Persona 1 was developed with a very different team than the original. A team once led by the likes of Koji Okada and Hidetoshi Takaki was now helmed by Katsuro Hashino, Shoji Meguro, and Hirokazu Toyama. We're far removed from the days where this is an acceptable amount of staffers. But more importantly, we're now in the mid-2000s. The main sounds of the time were hip-hop and pop-punk. Think the likes of Fall Out Boy, Outkast, Blink-182, and so many others. The music was very in-your-face, cutting straight to an emotional core. A flavor that carried over perfectly into some key Persona 3 tracks known more pivotally than Mass Destruction. But, Joey, wait a minute, this is a Persona 1 video. Why are you talking about Persona 3? You might be asking yourself. Well, a lot of the team from Persona 3 ended up working on this port. Most key might be Shoji Meguro, who served as director. Given his main thing is music, a lot of his style and flair would end up carrying into this port. What we ended up getting is an OST that's a lot more lyrically based and poppy compared to the gritty industrial sounds of yesterday. Boss fights sound like you're not fighting for your life as hard, character themes end up becoming a bit homogenized, daily life, school days, and strange atmosphere get used all over the goddamn place. You get the point. It's a point I'm getting a bit ahead of myself on, though. So now that we know how the PSP version's OST is different, we have to ask the all-important question. Why does it matter? Why is this soundtrack so egregious, so awful, so contentious, when it has the banger of all time? Doggo, turn that shit up! For most people, it comes down to two main factors. The simpler answer, there's no option to select which soundtrack you want. That much isn't an option in other remakes like Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and the Persona 2 remakes, but such an option simply does not exist natively for Persona 1. As such, if there's a track that you really enjoyed in the original Persona 1, such as the original rendition of the video world, the various map themes, Ellie's theme, the battle music, and more, too bad. More presently, though, the matter of tone. In its original incarnation, Persona 1 goes for a sort of ethereal atmosphere. Things almost feel dreamlike, as if you're going through a fantasy world filled with all sorts of demons, trying to make it through the adventure in one piece while getting to know your fellow party members. You know, classic RPG stuff. The game presented this big mystery of trying to figure out who this version of Maki was and paired it with potentially fatal fights against the likes of the Robo-Rat, Chisato, and Kandori himself. The music for the main set pieces is accompanied beautifully by its smaller moments, each character getting their own theme meant to showcase their personality, dungeon themes meant to put you on edge that actually kind of bop half the time, map themes that correspond to your surroundings, a casino theme that actually sounds like you're gambling, and so on. I'll readily admit I do enjoy some of the PSP version's OST. Again, School Days, generational bop. The opening track is fantastic and a lot better than this. And Bloody Destiny is genuinely a pretty good boss fight track. And also infinitely better than A Lone Prayer, but that is a topic for the comments and for another day. But in getting these tracks, we lose quite a bit of what makes Persona 1 itself. Starting with the character themes, aside from Maki, who's fortunate enough to get a remix, pretty much everyone else has their theme replaced with pretty generic atmospheric music. Ellie, I think, gets the shortest end of the stick here. Space is terrible compared to her original theme. The only party member who gets to keep some semblance of their character theme is Mark. Kind of. For some reason, a remix of his theme was given to Ayase, and while I can see them landing in similar territory, yeah, no, that's on reads from Mark Fern, sorry girl. I alluded to it earlier, but 3 tracks end up replacing a solid amount of OST. while School Days is relegated to things such as the shopping areas and school grounds, which would have been perfectly fine if it didn't wipe out calming tracks such as the Rosa Candida theme, and while Daily Life slots itself in for a lot of the early game conversations over the character themes, Strange Atmosphere is by far the biggest offender. It's not a bad song by any means, but it quickly gets into Persona 4 piano song levels of overuse as you go through the game. It doesn't matter if your team is just having a conversation, if Brown and Mark appear on the screen, if Gandori is around, if you're within specific dungeons. Get ready to hear. Sure, it's somewhat funny, much like the Persona 4 song I mentioned a bit ago, but that ironic humor comes at the expense of Persona 1's identity. The OST job in general was a shot at modernization, to appeal to those jumping over from Persona 3 and 4 while Persona 3 Portable was still being worked on. While there are definitely some winning moments with the new soundtrack, you end up stripping back just how wholly unique Persona 1 was in many ways. How things seemed perfectly grasped but not, how you were going down this long winding fantasy journey, all cut into by replaced tracks, removed character themes, and a loss of that terror, that unknowing sense of where you'll go next, or if you're going to make it out of the battle alive. I hope with all of this said, you now have a much firmer grasp as to why the PSP version of Persona 1 soundtrack is such a hot-button issue for fans of the game. Where do you stand on things? Do you prefer the PS1's OST? Are you bopping out to School Days all day, every day? Or are you just upset there's no option to switch between the soundtracks? Let me know down in the comments, and as always, if you'd like to hear more from me, please like and subscribe. For now, my name is Joey Pals, signing out. We got plenty of works, including a potential Persona 2 Innocent Sin retrospective. Stay tuned for that. Take care now.